Hello everyone, I'm Jordan Levy, the founder and executive director of CapSource. We're an experiential learning company dedicated to bridging the skills gap between the professional work environment and higher education. I've been working in the education space for about 10 years now. I actually founded CapSource in 2017 as a way to help institutions, their administrators, educators, and staff build and scale high-impact experiential learning programs. And ultimately, we're in this for the students. We believe they really need this experience. And we've learned quite a lot about what the role is of institutions and what we call is the experiential bargain, or the trade-off between experiential learning for institutions and their students and experiential hiring for the industry partners that are involved. I want to thank the Experiential Learning Congress for inviting us here today to present. We feel that this is an incredible organization that supports the growth, expansion of high quality impactful experiential learning. And we're looking forward to sharing with you a little bit about our methodology and framework and what we use to make sure that experiential learning is accessible to all students and that they're all graduating with reference-worthy experience and a good perspective on their field of study from a professional standpoint. So to get us started, I wanted to kind of cover first and foremost why experiential learning is necessary and why we think it's the future of education. A lot of the terminology around the skills gap has been around for decades now. Students are graduating without the skills that they need, both soft and technical. And in order for schools to be able to train students on the types of skills that they need to be in touch with industry. So when we ask industry leaders what they think about experiential learning and the need to train students more for the professional work environment, many don't currently believe that schools are doing a good job at preparing students for the workforce, but they believe that they can. And so that's why we have built our business around serving institutions and helping them transition from a content-oriented education approach to an experiential education approach. Of course, the students, the key consumer, some might even say the customer of higher education, they don't believe they're getting the outcomes that they want either. And if this continues to happen, they're going to look elsewhere, and so will the business leaders that are recruiting these students. So to start off with, kind of what is experiential learning, right? We think it's the solution to the skills gap problem because it puts students in a place to actually develop real outcomes for real stakeholders using those critical soft and technical skills. So some of the soft skills we like to track are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And we also believe strongly that it's not just soft skills that make you successful from day one on the job, although that definitely helps land the position and start off on the right foot. But ultimately, we think that students need to practice using technical tools like the G Suite, Microsoft Office, Power BI, Google Analytics, project management software like Asana and Jira, in order to develop real outcomes for real stakeholders who provide real feedback along the way. And so ultimately, we think that experiential learning is more defined by the outcome of the experience than the actual experience itself. Every experience is a learning experience if you look at it the right way. But experiential learning is actually about generating reference-worthy experience or resume-worthy experience, which means it has to be attributed to a real organization. It has to be dedicated to a real function within that organization where the students are working on real challenges that have real stakes. So we've published a whole article about each of the soft skills and how it's done, how it's used in the experiential learning process. And we also talk a lot about reference-worthy experience as an outcome and why that's the crucial crux of how we design these experiential learning opportunities. At the end of the day, the students need to walk away with a new perspective, with something, with some semblance of value that they've provided to a real stakeholder that they can talk about on interviews and put on their resume and LinkedIn. So we think that there's basically two methodologies for experiential learning that are scalable. We like to say it's single student or multi-student. which is the capstone model, and then the multi-team, which is the live case model. The neat thing here is that these approaches have been used for generations. We just need to figure out how to get industry to say yes more often, and ultimately map out a set of goals and objectives that align with the teaching goals, which is actually a rather difficult process. But if you come at it with the right mentality and you attract the right industry partners, it should be relatively easy to identify project scopes that are going to benefit the students and the host organization. So I wanted to quickly give a couple of examples of what we mean. Obviously, pre-COVID, a lot of these experiential learning engagements had an in-person component, although students are working enrolled full-time in other classes, usually on campus and not able to go to an office. So a lot of this can happen and should happen virtually. This is an example of students actually working with the leadership team from a company called Hungry that does corporate catering. These are MBAs from the University of Notre Dame. I'm trying to figure out what the growth strategy should be. Where should this company expand into next from a geographical standpoint? And so this actually gives the opportunity for students to network, work as a team, develop their soft skills, and develop real outcomes for real stakeholders, which is exactly what they need out of their college experience. Now, of course, post-COVID, we've started to think a lot more about how do you facilitate this entire experience virtually. Not much of a challenge, right? There's the same tools that all industry organizations are using now to facilitate communication and collaboration among their team members can also be used by students that are collaborating with their team members. So this is an example of a live case competition. So it's actually many teams of students working on a challenge that we put together based on an organization called CoinSource, which is based down in Fort Worth, Texas. They're a Bitcoin ATM provider, and they were actually asking the students to help them figure out what the go-to-market strategy should be as they pivoted to a platform as a service or a more enterprise approach rather than selling individual kiosks to retail stores. They were trying to figure out how to sell the technology and infrastructure so that they can spread Bitcoin ATMs further and wider and reach a larger audience. I think the outcomes of this were some of the most impactful ever. We're actually working with CoinSource in the future. I'm developing more live case experiences for them because they generated such meaningful outcomes, not only strategically and operationally, the ideas that the students came up with, but they actually hired 4 students out of this engagement that were the top performers. So now we're getting to see what is the value proposition of all this to the industry side of the platform? Well, it's experiential hiring. You're getting a chance to test out these students, challenge them with something that's real and tangible that you're actually thinking about on a regular basis from an operational and executive strategy standpoint. They're interacting with your leadership. They're learning about your business and industry and products. And then ultimately, they're ready to go once you are queued up and hiring the ones that you think are the best fit. This is an example of a certificate that we provided to the students. They can use this directly on their social, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. They can actually proudly say, hey, I participated in something that helped me gain experience in these fields based on this organization with this challenge. And that's really powerful for them because that's exactly the type of conversation recruiters and talent leaders are looking to discuss when students and young professionals are applying for full-time jobs. So this leads us to the trade-off, right? So what is going on between the students and the educators involved in the experiential bargain and the industry side of the platform, the industry hosts that provide intellectual property, mentoring, and the ultimate challenge that the students are going to work on. So we like to say that the students get to apply theory to real projects that have real stakes, and that companies derive fresh ideas and cost-effective solutions to their business challenges. Of course, also, students are able to develop key soft and technical skills while networking professionally, both with their peers and with the organization that hosts them, various professionals that are involved in these projects. So on the other side, companies are actually getting to train and onboard new talent and they get to brand themselves as an employer that cares about the next generation, that wants to hear those insights, and that ultimately is ready to hire the students that are the best performers. And then I think the key outcome of all of this for the students is reference-worthy experience, as we mentioned. That's the ability to reference a specific example where you made an impact on a real organization, real stakeholders. And the company ultimately gets evaluated talent to hire the best folks that are the right fit organizationally and strategically, depending on the department and who's in need of talent. So this kind of quickly highlights what we mean by reference-worthy experience. These students are technically learning, right? So the classroom becomes the company is what we like to say. And the students are actually able to synthesize down their experience to a few bullet points, like Brandon did in this example, that they can showcase on LinkedIn. And that is what creates momentum for them as they're applying for more jobs. They're not applying something out of their league above their pay grade. They're earning a new pay grade. They're earning their right to have a seat at the table, to be invited into the room to discuss their qualifications and how they can make a real difference. And the inherent challenge with traditional curriculum is that you're sitting in a classroom, you can't really make an impact on a real organization. In these cases, you can. And so that's really what enables the students to be proud of the work that they've done and showcase what they can actually accomplish. So we also like to really dive into the other side of the model. So what is flipped experiential hiring? Flipped hiring is a new concept that essentially gives challenges to candidates before they're hired, right? So you're not actually engaged full-time working while you're working on these challenges. You're actually still in the recruitment funnel, and then you're hired at the end. So we like to say it's a 3-step process. It starts with engage, which really comes down to designing the experience, recruiting the right candidates, launching the experience, and challenging the students with a relevant challenge based on the role that you're vetting them for. And then the assessment part, you'll notice, is actually very similar to the component of the experiential learning framework that talks about the skills that the students are developing. And so the same skills that they're developing are also the ones that companies are vetting. So that's the true crux of the bargain. And then at the end, the organizations get to hire the best ones, right? The selecting and retaining top talent that are qualified, they're engaged, they feel empowered to be productive, right? Those are the best candidates. Those are the ones that will stick around for the longest term. So this is the main point we wanted to share with you, is a kind of, okay, so now we understand what experiential learning is and experiential hiring is. Where do institutions and their educators fit into this model? We like to say that it fits into 3 pillars. Organization, so that's the design of the experience, enrollment of students, alignment with teaching goals and company objectives, right? That's the organization component. The facilitation component is actually the implementation of that experience from a learning standpoint and from a project standpoint, right? So to some extent, it's almost like running a consulting firm. Instead of you doing the work, you have students that are supporting you, that are helping you do the research, that are synthesizing results and coming up with ideas that they can bounce off of you. It's a co-created environment. And ultimately, we want to help the students reflect and learn from these experiences. So that's a big piece of the CapSource platform, is trying to figure out how to help students reflect on what's happening and really deduce what it is that they're learning from these experiences. Lastly, accreditation, right? This is the component that makes universities defensible compared to other education providers that might be for-profit or professional development oriented. These can actually be accumulated together and packaged as programs, whether it's part of an MBA program, part of a different type of Master's of Science level program, or undergraduate. And even in some cases, we're using this for high schools. So the institution ultimately serves to assign credit to these experiences, and that's really the role of institutions in the experiential bargain. So Ultimately, we developed this flywheel. This is what we like to help schools accomplish. Of course, you got to start by building experiential learning programs. You can't attract companies without them. But once you start having those programs and that they're successful, you're starting to really produce desirable talent that gets placed into those organizations. And then I think the key for the future of institutions is really figuring out how to monetize industry partners, often alumni that want to give back. And so that's what we really like to say is a big outcome of this entire model, is that there is now a differentiated revenue source for institutions that really want to drive value to the partners that they're bringing into the curricular piece of their organization. So we invite you all to join our growing network. We're very proud of the progress that we've made over the last few years since we've gotten started. Thousands of students, hundreds of companies working together on challenges that are research-oriented, project-based, and experiential. It wouldn't be possible without our experiential educators. These are folks that are dedicated to helping students learn more about themselves, learn more about the professional work environment, and find a career path that works for them. And ultimately get started from a really great place. And so these are awesome educators that have filled out profiles, that are sharing their story, sharing their methodology of what is experiential learning. So we definitely recommend checking out our Experiential Educators page on our website and applying to participate if you consider yourself an experiential educator. In short, CapSource would love to help drive experiential learning adoption and scale at your school. We do it through two primary methods. One is Connect Software, which is a white label ecosystem, an experiential learning management system that helps educators coordinate, manage, and scale programs with industry partners. And then the sourcing and project design service is where we match educators and design projects with industry partners based on narrow academic requirements and teaching goals. So to wrap up here, we hope that you're interested in bridging the skills gap with us. We hope to get more industry involved, integrated, and invested into education. We want universities to find that experiential learning is approachable and effective as a way to prepare students for their careers, and students are ultimately engaged and career ready. A big shout out to my team for making this possible. We really enjoy the opportunity to help universities grow their experiential learning impact and process, and it wouldn't really be possible without our core team and our advisors. I invite you all to get in touch with us. You can, of course, give us a ring directly, shoot us an email, or on the website, capsource.io. There's a way for you to schedule time directly on my calendar, and I'd love to meet with you and hear a little bit about your experiential learning endeavors. So with that, I want to say thank you to the Experiential Learning Congress for putting together some awesome sessions and curating thought leadership around experiential learning. We need to work together to make sure that institutions have the right resources to build these programs sustainably, and that there's a future for institutions that educate students and prepare them for the working world. So with that, I'll say thank you. I look forward to hearing from you, and I wish you all the best of luck and the best of health.